Welcome back, everybody. This is Eric here with Iraq Veteran 8888. All right, today I have a special guest here on the channel. We are going to be taking some of your legal questions. I have Mr. Andrew Branca here on the channel, and he has the Law of Self-Defense, really cool organization. He is a 2A related lawyer, primarily in the field of self-defense and the do's and don'ts. And thanks for coming by and hanging out with me today on the channel, man.
It's a genuine pleasure. I'm honored to be here.
Yeah. So Andrew and I, we'll follow each other on Twitter, and we've had a few exchanges in the past, and we started sort of just mutually reaching out to each other and having discussions about everything from life and liberty and freedom, and of course guns and things like that. And I thought it'd be a great idea to have Andrew here on the channel. He's a wealth of knowledge, really, really great guy, and we're gonna break down a question today that is probably one of the most commonly asked questions when it comes to self-defense that someone could ever ask, right? Would be, you hear this question all the time. Andrew, they say, if someone is trying to break into my home, can I shoot them? Can I engage them? Can I neutralize the threat? I know that question is a little like, whoa, okay, we went there, right? But look, it is a common question that people have. They ask, those sorts of things. Because when people are put in dangerous situations, oftentimes they don't know what to do. They don't know what the correct course of action is. And most importantly, in relation to this question, Andrew, what are the legal ramifications? If someone does use a firearm in self-defense when someone is in the act of breaking into their home, what are the ramifications? What are someone's duties in that situation? What should be going through their mind? What should they be considering? What should they do?
Sure. Well, I mean, generally speaking, of course, no one should be getting into fights they don't need to get into. The possible consequences once you go hands-on in a fight is you incur two risks you were not incurring a moment before. One is a greater than zero risk of dying in the fight. That's one possible outcome. You can be great with a gun or jiu-jitsu or whatever, but the risk of losing the fight's never zero. You can get it low, but it's never zero. The second risk is the risk of going to prison for the rest of your life. Innocent people get convicted. You could do everything right and still end up going to prison. So before you get into that fight, you should think to yourself, what am I prepared to die over? And what am I prepared to go to prison for the rest of my life over?
What are you prepared to lose everything over?
It ought to be a pretty short list. Now, one of those things, of course, would be defense of your home, defense of your castle. In your home, you have all the rights of self-defense that you would have out in the street, for example, meaning if you're facing an imminent threat of unlawful death or serious bodily injury, the law says you can use deadly force to defend yourself. You have that same privilege in your home and more privileges, because in your home, the law generally legally presumes, the jury will be told, there is a legal presumption that if someone's forcibly and unlawfully entering your home, you had a reasonable fear of imminent deadly force harm from that person, which really checks all the boxes you need to justify your use of self-defense. Deadly force in self-defense. So defense of dwelling is the hardest self-defense scenario for the defender to screw up. People do screw it up still. Sometimes they'll chase the bad guy out of their house and run him down on the street and shoot him in the back, and that doesn't look like defensive dwelling anymore. But as long as you're in your home dealing with a forcible, unlawful intruder, it's extremely difficult to mess that up from a lawful shooting perspective.
Earlier, we were having breakfast, and we actually brought this question up, and we briefly discussed it a little bit, and that was why we decided to go with this particular question first thing here, getting into making some videos today. And one of the questions that I asked Andrew at breakfast this morning, I was like, well, would the standard for what would be considered, presumption of bodily injury or presumption of death or presumption of someone using force against you, would that standard be different for a 100-pound girl versus a 250-pound man that's a bodybuilder, right? Okay, what does that look like? How does that work?
So the legal standard doesn't change. The legal standard is the same. You're privileged to use deadly force in self-defense if you're facing an imminent threat of death or serious bodily injury. But the factual circumstances are different. So you weigh 250 pounds. If a 200-pound dude throws a punch at you, that's unlikely to cause you death or serious bodily injury. You're able to defend yourself. But that same 200-pound dude throwing that same punch at a 100-pound woman is likely to inflict death or serious bodily injury on her. So whereas you may not be facing a deadly force threat that would privilege you to go to the gun for self-defense, that woman may be privileged to go to the gun because she is facing a deadly force threat from that same punch. The legal standard is the same, but the factual scenarios are different.
Let's provide another scenario. Let's say that the would-be perpetrator picks up a cinder block that happened to be in your yard and decides to smash your window with the cinder block, or he has a giant crowbar in his hand and he is prying at the door and beating on the door, or otherwise trying to gain entry to your abode in some way, shape, or form using a heavy object, a rock, a crowbar, a giant stick, some sort of, something that could be used as a weapon as well. Now, does that change things a bit?
And we're presuming you're in the home watching this person
Yeah, we're
try to break
presuming
in.
you're in the home, and some guy, you saw him on your Ring camera, he's showing up and he's proceeding to beat on the outside of your abode with a heavy object, a crowbar or something like that.
So the object's not really necessary in terms of having that legal presumption of a reasonable fear of harm when you're in your home. If they're attempting to forcibly and unlawfully enter your home, that triggers that legal presumption. Now, where the object helps is it removes ambiguity from the situation. If they're only kicking your door or pounding your door, then when the police show up, they may say, well, we don't see evidence he was trying to forcibly break in.
Right.
But if there's a crowbar, if there's a cinder block, if there's a broken window, that's all, because remember, the police were not there when this happened, right? Mm-hmm. No one evaluating your use of force was there when you defended yourself. You're not attacked when you're standing next to a uniformed police officer.
Right.
So they're coming and arriving in a scene later, and they're looking for evidence from which they can make reasonable inferences about what happened. Cinder blocks, crowbars, broken glass, that's evidence that's consistent with your story that makes your story more credible to them.
Yeah. Or let's say in the situation, if I'm a 250-pound bodybuilder or power lifter, and the person that tried to break into my house is a 200-pound guy, well, if he had a crowbar or a cinder block, then I can now assume that, hey, he has some potential advantage over me, and hey, he has weapons, so he's going to be much more of a threat than, we're not talking about powerlifting isn't using, fighting. Right. Just because someone is strong or they're a power lifter, or they're exceptionally gifted, or a big guy or something, doesn't necessarily mean that a 200-pound guy still can't smash his head with a brick or hit him with a crowbar.
Sure.
Or, whatever,
Sure. So I don't care how strong or capable someone is weaponless, and many people are very strong and capable. If they also have a weapon, they are 100 times more effective in inflicting damage than if they don't have the weapon.
That was really my question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Wow. It's just so wild how many people, you see in internet communities, Andrew, how a lot of people will say, well, given this circumstance, I'm going to react a certain way. I'm going to have a preconditioned reflex type of an environment where I'm going to react in a certain way when this happens. Really every single potential use of force for self-defense, it is all literally case-by-case basis. Every circumstance is different. And it's almost like if someone thinks they know how to react, that's wrong. Like you never know how you're going to react. Like, because you might have to engage your verbal judo. You may have an ability to get away. They may not really be a threat in the moment. Maybe they're just on your property lurking around. They're not trying to forcefully gain entry. Maybe they're looking at something on your property and thinking about maybe stealing it or something like that. Now that could be probably another video, Andrew, but just because someone's on your property and they're trespassing, okay, that is not justification to shoot someone just because they're simply on your property.
Right. You can't shoot a simple trespasser anywhere in America. That includes Texas, which has some unusual deadly force laws. But I want to circle back to this notion that people are pre-planning their responses. And I think we need to refine it a bit, because I think pre-planning is good. I think people should do it. I think where people get in trouble is when their plan is overly simplistic. Their plan is no matter what happens, no matter what degree of threat or circumstances, if I'm frightened, I'm going to the gun. That gets people in trouble. Those people, even if they don't fire a shot, the most common cases I work on are normal law-abiding people who went to the gun too early, and they get charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon.
Brandishing.
That's a felony. No, brandishing is only a misdemeanor, but aggravated assault with a deadly weapon is a felony good for 10 to 20 years in prison in most states. These are people who've never even got a speeding ticket before, and now they're looking at a couple decades in prison.
Wow.
I think we should pre-plan our responses. You can't predict every facet of a threat you might face, but they do tend to fall into buckets. Categorizable buckets. So there's the guy who's using profanity at the restaurant table next to yours, and you'd like him to calm down. There's someone who's cutting in line of you at a movie theater. There's someone who's angry at you in a road rage kind of incident. There's someone who's using really threatening language, but not necessarily displaying a weapon or closing distance. So there's all these kinds of escalating scenarios that fall into recognized buckets. Armed robberies tend to happen in mostly the same way. Someone approaches you and shows a weapon, says, give me your wallet, you don't know all the details. You don't know if it's going to be a gun or a knife, but
you don't even know if the weapon's real.
You don't know
or
if it's
they
real.
have a weapon. Maybe they come up behind you and just say they do, and they might not.
But I think people should pre-plan. If I'm approached by a guy and he's not displaying a weapon and asks for my wallet, what am I prepared to do in that circumstance? If he is displaying a weapon, what am I prepared to do? Do my responses change if I'm by myself or if my family, my wife and kids are with me? So I think there are buckets of threats that are common and categorizable, and we should pre-plan our responses to that. For example, I firmly believe that people should know ahead of time, have thought out the limited number of circumstances in which they're actually prepared to shoot another human being. And if you're encountering something that's scary and it doesn't fall into one of those scenarios you've programmed before, you should think long and hard before you go to that gun, because it's probably not one in which, in hindsight, when the stress is over, you're going to say, you know what, that was a good decision shooting that guy.
So what Andrew is saying, and what I'm gathering here, is that it's okay to go through the scenarios. It's okay to say, all right, in this situation, what would I potentially do? But you should always take in all of the information as you see it. And, you have to, look, I hate to use this example, because I know it's kind of like a different thing. But like when a law enforcement officer is forced to shoot a potential suspect, right? They have to make a decision in real time with the information available in the quickest manner possible, and they have to do it potentially and usually in defense of their self and the people around them. So is a law enforcement officer any different than you or I? Well, yeah, law enforcement officer is a designated person in society that we send to deal with our bullcrap when we don't want to deal with it. And okay, you are essentially trusting them to make decisions on society's behalf. That's the way I see it. But the decision-making process for a law enforcement officer or for you on the street is really not that much different. The only difference is they just happen to be involved in more of that type of stuff because they are designated people that go after those sorts of situations, and they come across those types of people way more often than an average person would. If someone calls the police because something's going on, well, guess what? That cop has to have some mindset that maybe what they're going into could be potentially dangerous because, hey, they're the designated person to deal with that danger by society. So a cop has to take all the information in, make the decision, and, hey, it's a life and death decision, and the same may be true for you. You never know when you may find yourself in a position to, unfortunately, you might have to make a decision, and you may have to make that decision quickly and with the best information that you have available. So to Andrew's credit, what he was saying, I think it is very important to have some preconditioned responses in your head. Like, okay, if things go this far to the line, what am I willing to do? And am I prepared to do it? Will I actually do it? And in the moment of truth, will I be able to actually do what is necessary? And that's probably a question people do need to ask themselves.
So I think of it in terms of, all right, here's a low-level bucket of threat. You just walk away from that one, right? You don't have to get into a fight. Here's a slightly higher level of threat. Well, that's a circumstance in which I'm prepared to go hands-on, but only hands-on. A slightly higher level of threat. I'm prepared to use pepper spray against that particular threat. A slightly higher level of threat. This is the bucket of threats in which I'm prepared to put my hand on my gun, make that person aware I have a gun. Stay back, I'm prepared to defend myself. The next higher level, maybe the gun comes out to a low ready. The highest level of threat, of course, is where you'd actually be firing a shot at someone using deadly force against them. But when you're facing any of the common threats out there in society, you should know ahead of time what bucket it falls into and what level of force you're prepared to use in self-defense. So you're not trying to work that out in the crisis of the moment, because we don't tend to make better decisions under stress if we haven't planned beforehand. We tend to make worse decisions. So plan beforehand. I mean, the military does this, right? If there's an ambush, you guys know exactly what you're going to do when an ambush occurs, right?
Right. If you're a person that doesn't, handle firearms that often, say you're a gun owner, but you don't really train with your firearm that often, right? Say that, and I know this is sort of an overused scenario, but let's say your firearm, let's just say has a manual safety, all right? And say you never train with your firearm and you go, okay, something crazy just happened and I have to pull my gun out and use it. Like, it is an emergency, it is life and death, and if I don't get a bullet down range, I'm probably gonna die, right? Let's just say it's do or die, and you pull the gun out and you're fidgeting because you don't train with it enough, you haven't developed muscle memory to know what to do, you're not familiar enough with the firearm, well, now you've caused yourself a liability by introducing a gun into the situation because you were not prepared. You didn't take the proper precautions in time to learn your way around that firearm so that it would be a force multiplier and not potentially something that is actually just going to be a liability. I mean, I hate to say that because look, guns should make you more prepared. You should feel more confident. You should feel, like you have a better edge on a potentially bad situation when you are armed. But it can be, for some people, a liability if you don't take the necessary time to learn your way around a given firearm. If you're fidgeting with safeties, if you're drawing a gun and it's getting all hung on your clothes every time, those are deficiencies in your techniques and your mindset and your level of training disposition that you need to correct so that in the moment of truth, you're not thinking about sweeping your jacket out of the way. You're not thinking about clearing a thumb brake or rocking a paddle or something like that or flipping a switch. You're not thinking about taking a safety off or, hey, is there a round in the chamber? Well, I don't know. I don't always carry a round in the chamber. Well, did you carry a round in the chamber today? See, all those things should not be going through your head in the moment that you need that tool to save your life.
Right. Ideally, you want to be unconsciously competent in all that. Those should all be automatic things that are just happening. So you're freeing up mental bandwidth to evaluate the threat and how you want to respond to the threat. Now, having said that, absolutely, if you're going to carry a gun, if you're going to own a gun, you need to be, at a minimum, competent enough that you're not going to shoot yourself or someone you care about with that gun. So safety is an absolute. Yeah. The more training you can get, the more practice you do, the better off you're going to be. The more likely you are to win that physical fight with that platform. Mm-hmm. But I wouldn't tell people, don't start carrying a gun until you've had 500 hours of training. You want to keep getting trained. The more training you have, the better. But the vast majority of people who successfully defend themselves with a gun from criminal predators have virtually no training. That's just the way it is. They went and they bought a gun. They got their concealed carry permit. I'm not recommending that. I'm recommending training. I want to be clear on that. But a lot of people successfully defend themselves with not that much training. I mean, ultimately, the first rule of a gunfight is what? Have a gun.
Have a gun.
Right?
That's true. So in light of the original question, if someone is using force and breaking into your home, can you use deadly force? The short answer is yes.
Yes.
But you must understand all of the facts and circumstances and things that go into it.
Right. Well, you can use deadly force if you're facing an imminent, unlawful deadly force threat. If they're breaking into your home, it's legally presumed that that's the case, so that those conditions have been met. Say, for example, they break into your home and you say, get out of here, I've got a gun, and they turn around and they run away. Well, now they're no longer presenting as an imminent. Even the presumption will be rebutted in court. It'll be overcome because they're just running down the street at that point.
And if you can use your verbal judo to de-escalate the situation, hey, in a loud, authoritative voice, I have a gun and I'll use it. Whoa, okay, they drop the crowbar, like, I don't want none of this smoke, and they run away. Guess what? You saved yourself a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I think these verbal commands are almost as important as having a gun for two reasons. One is, first of all, the commands may actually work. They may obey your commands, right? They may get out of your house. They may drop the weapon. And that's awesome, right? You've now just won the fight with your voice. That's fantastic.
And cheaply.
Right. But that's not within your control, right? Whether that other person obeys your commands is up to them, fundamentally, whether they choose to do that. But verbal commands are always very useful because a lot of self-defense scenarios, the defender gets in trouble, the lawful defender, because the situation's ambiguous. It's not clear what's happening. This often happens. I'll give you a scenario. So a woman works late in her office building. Everyone else has gone home. She's walking through the parking garage now to get to her car. It's dark. It's cold. No one else is around, except for some creepy dude that's 30 feet behind her, maybe following her to her car. Maybe his car just happens to be parked in the same area. She doesn't know, right? And
being creepy is not illegal.
Right, but she's feeling scared, right? I mean, this could be a real threat. He's much bigger than her. He's not dressed very well. She's never seen him before. Mm-hmm. Now, she can't just turn around and shoot him in the face because he hasn't done anything, right? But what can she do? She can turn around, point at him, and say, get the hell away from me. What's a normal guy going to do? If he was just a normal dude who happened to be parked by her car, he's going to go, whoa, lady, you're crazy.
Yeah.
Right?
Or hey, I didn't mean to scare you. I'm just walking to my car.
Or
put her at ease,
If he doesn't do that, if he keeps coming closer, now you've compelled him to either stop doing what's scaring you or to act in a manner consistent with a threat. an evidence-based way. You're observing his behavior. You're giving him commands, and he's disobeying those commands. He keeps coming closer. Does that allow you to make a reasonable inference that this is not some normal dude, that this is a guy who's actually a threat? Absolutely. Right. So your voice is stripping the ambiguity out of the scenario and allowing you to make more decisive decisions in self-defense in the moment.
If someone has, for instance, I know many people have them now, like the doorbell cameras. If you've got a Ring camera, and let's say the Ring camera picks up the person trying to bash in your door or something like that, but then the Ring camera also picks up you giving them a very, very distinctive, direct order and an authoritative voice. Hey, I have a gun, and if you keep beating on my door, I'm going to shoot you, right? And the Ring camera catches it all. Well, I don't see any prosecutor in the world having any sort of girth against you to be able to say that you didn't try to de-escalate the situation without force.
Yeah, and it can be even more subtle than that, right? If someone's kicking in your door, it's pretty obvious what they're doing, right? But what if someone's just trying your doorknob repeatedly, and you're like, what the heck is that guy doing, right? Now, is it possible?
Maybe he's got the wrong house.
Right,
maybe
exactly.
He's drunk,
it could be an innocent intruder. It could be a drunk guy.
Right.
He was given the wrong address for the party, and he thinks his friends are pranking him by not letting him in, right? But if you have that doorbell speaker, and you can say, hey, what are you doing? Get out of here. Well, now it can't be an innocent mistake anymore.
Yeah,
right?
someone
Now,
says, hey, is this Johnny's house? No, you got the wrong house.
Right.
See, they might be actually trying your doorknob, wanting to get in, but then they may just go, hey, I'm looking for Johnny's house. Well, this ain't Johnny's house. You need to go away. Fine, go
right,
away.
we call that the dilemma of the innocent intruder. So it's possible for someone to be in your home unlawfully, without your permission. They're trespassing, but they're not there with malice. Right, they're guests from out of town, and you live in one of these apartment complexes where they all look the same, and they went out and had a few drinks in town. They come back, they just walk into the wrong place, right?
Right.
Or they're a repairman who's sent to the wrong address. He's told, hey, they can't be home, they got to work, but they're going to leave the back door unlocked so you can repair the dishwasher.
Yeah.
And they send him to the wrong address. So he goes to that house, the back door is unlocked, he walks in. He's there without license. He's an intruder in the home, but he's not there with malice. He's not there to commit some crime. And that's why... Just a misunderstanding. And that's why this law that creates this legal presumption that someone's there to cause you deadly force harm, it usually requires that they're there unlawfully, and also that they got in forcibly. They broke something to get in. Because there may be an innocent explanation for why there's a stranger in your kitchen, but there's no innocent explanation for why he broke something to get into your kitchen.
I think anyone can come to the conclusion that if your wife comes out of the bathroom and she's got her bathrobe on, and she just got out of the shower, and there's a repairman standing in the kitchen, and of course she's gonna be like, whoa. It might scare the crap out of her, but surely she would understand that if a repairman is standing in the kitchen and the back door is open with no force, that there's obviously an explanation for that. You probably shouldn't go grab your shotgun and shoot the repairman. Yeah. It's going to be a lot harder burden to overcome. I mean, yes, you were scared, but were you justified in the use of blowing someone with a shotgun? Probably not.
Right. And by the way, that's also a good reason for keeping your doors locked. Because then you're compelling someone to break something to get in, right? If you don't habitually lock your doors, that's how the innocent intruder happens. The out-of-town guest just tries a doorknob, walks in. The repairman comes, the back door is unlocked, so he walks in. But if your doors are locked, then for there to be a stranger in your home, they had to break something.
Good point. Good point. It actually, I'll just tell a quick story, and then we'll wrap this video up. It actually happened to a friend of mine, okay? I'm not going to say exactly who it is, but someone I've known for many years. And his brother was playing a prank on their parents, okay? And it was a perfectly innocent prank to this brother, okay? But what they did was he said, well, I'm going to act like I'm an intruder, and I'm going to slide the window open and scare the crap out of my mom and dad while they're sleeping. Unfortunately, the dad killed him, okay? But think about what the dad knew. All he knew is someone was coming into the window in a threatening manner, and of course it was just a joke, but he didn't know that. You're half asleep, and he's killed his own son.
Yeah, and unfortunately that happens.
But it was a prank, but it was a prank gone wrong, right? And before he could say, Dad, it's me, or let him know it was a prank, too late.
Yeah.
Imagine how the dad felt.
You never get over it.
No. So that's why it's so important to identify. Make sure you properly identify your target. Did the dad have a really good weapons light that maybe would light up and son, what are you doing in here? I'm going to beat your ass. I mean, that's what would happen in that moment. So all these things come into play. I'm not trying to create a weird, make everyone feel uncomfortable, but I literally know someone that happened to, and that's scary. Like,
yeah,
of course it was an accident, but damn, what an accident.
I will say this, of course, good weapons mounted lights are everywhere today, right? Mm-hmm. So they're easy to get. Many people carry a weapons mounted light just on their carry gun. They carry on their person every day. I don't, just personally, I don't like the way the gun recoils with the weight of the light on it. But every one of my guns intended for home defense, every one, long guns, handguns, has a light on it. Because if I'm defending, most of the time when you're out and about, you're carrying concealed, you're never in complete darkness. It's very unusual. There's almost always some ambient light where you can see something. Otherwise, how would the bad guy find you if it was complete darkness? But when are you in complete darkness? When you're in your home at night sleeping and you hear glass breaking, and then it's completely dark. And you absolutely have to have a light on your gun to make sure you're not about to shoot somebody that means a lot to you.
That's right. And also, again, getting back to, let's just say, the prosecutor sort of end of things, where let's say a prosecutor is going to come to the table and, I'm providing a counter argument to you as a prosecutor. Well, your client didn't even have a proper way to identify what he was shooting at. You had no weapons light, had no ambient light. How did he even know that what he was shooting at was a threat? Now, that's right. Me being the prosecutor. I'm arguing to you.
That's exactly the argument.
You must articulate why your client didn't have a weapons light, why he didn't have a way. So it's like, that's good advice. Like, a weapons light could just be, even if you didn't use the light, at least you had it. And they would say, well, he had a way and had planned to properly identify things in his home with a light on the firearm.
Right.
So all of those things come into play. And of course, we're getting into like these kind of weird scenarios. However, it all goes back to the original question. Yes, you most certainly can use deadly force in defense of your abode, and the standards for which are pretty clear and plainly, legally defined. So that's a really common question, y'all, that people ask that all the time. It's super common because, I would say that, and Andrew's probably better. We'll end this video by just answering this one little tidbit here. When people are involved in shootings, right? If we're talking someone's being robbed and then they, bring their gun out and stop the threat, or if it's a home invasion or something like that, wouldn't a home invasion be a really common situation where someone's going to be put into a situation to potentially defend themselves, in your experience?
Yeah, because there's no place for them to go, right? If you're out on the street and you're facing a threat, there's always some possibility you might be able to escape or evade that threat with complete safety, not increasing your jeopardy, without having to use force. But that presumes that there's a safer place for you to go. Right. If you're in your home, there is no safer place for you to go. That's where your back is to the wall. That's where you have to fight if they compel you to use force in self-defense.
And your disposition to feel as if you were compelled to fight back is going to be that much more. What if your baby's in the other room asleep? Your wife is in the room asleep. Now, it's not just you that's in danger. It's your family that's in danger. It's your dogs. It's your livelihood. It's everything you love. It's your family albums. I mean, all these things are going through the back of your head. This person is destroying the ever-loving sanctity of your life. They are entering the only little chasm of personal space on this planet that you have to call yours, and they're invading that little space. It's one thing somebody walks up to you in the street. It's another thing when they kick your door in.
And it's easy for a jury to understand, right?
Sure.
If you're just out in the street and you get into a gunfight, the jury might say, oh, he's a hothead. He was carrying a gun because he was looking for trouble. He was just waiting for a chance to pull out that gun and shoot somebody. And a jury won't know anything about different kinds of guns or different types of terminal ballistics or ammo or anything like that, but they all live in a home.
They all know they'd be scared.
Yep, they all know what they would feel like if they heard glass breaking at 3 o'clock in the morning. So it's a very easy defense narrative to sell to a jury and a very difficult one for a prosecutor to overcome.
Wow, that's a great answer to that question, Andrew. I'm so glad I had you here for this particular video. And before we leave today on the video, tell them about your book and tell them about your services and stuff that you offer too. So if someone wants to sign up with you, what can they do? Let's go over that for them real quick.
Well, the good news is when it comes to self-defense law, I know it often seems like this kind of ambiguous black box. It's hard to understand how these legal outcomes occur, but it's actually very straightforward. There's only 5 elements, 5 components of any claim of self-defense. We cover them here in my book, The Law of Self-Defense Principles. Most people read this book in an afternoon. You can check it out on Amazon, 1,500 reviews, 5-star rated, but don't buy it there. They'll charge you $20 or $25 for the book, plus shipping and handling. I want to give you the book for free. So if you go to lawofselfdefense.com/free book, You can get this book for free. We only ask that you cover the cost of shipping the book to you. The book itself doesn't cost anything. And this teaches you about 80% of what you really need to know to defend yourself lawfully. And of course, we're happy to teach you the other 20% as well.
Absolutely. And also, tell them a little bit as well about your programs that you offer.
So about 80% of what we do is educational in nature. 20% is legal services. By legal services, I mean we provide legal consulting to normal people like you. Law-abiding people, never been in trouble with the law a day in their lives, are compelled to use force against someone else and find themselves criminally charged, going to trial, need the most robust legal defense they can have. That's what we provide. We have a very high success rate in getting charges dismissed, getting acquittals if we go to trial. But we try to focus our efforts on educating people before they're facing that criminal justice disaster, which a trial is. Our book is part of that. We have many classes that we teach, available online streamed, available as DVD. We teach a live class a couple times a year. The best way to learn about all of that is to go to our website, lawofselfdefense.com.
I'll put a link down in the description box below. So if you find yourself in any sort of a pickle, you better call your man, Andrew Branca, right freaking now. Don't delay. Get with him, and he'll make sure you get out squeaky clean. Of course, that's after digesting all of the great information he has to offer.
As we like to say at Law of Self-Defense, you need to be hard to kill. That's the most important thing. If you don't survive the physical fight, everything else is less important. But you don't just want to be hard to kill. You also want to be hard to convict.
That's right. Yeah, and it doesn't matter if you're alive if you're not free, right? So definitely some points to consider. Thanks so much, Andrew.
Yeah, that's a
pleasure.
pleasure.
Really appreciate it, man. I know we've been talking about trying to get you down for some videos for some time, so I'm glad we finally made it happen.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, we got more to come. I'm going to be covering some more questions here in the future. We are going to cut some more videos, so stay tuned for those. We hope that you'll check them out. Thank you so much. Again, in the description box below, check out Andrew's website. I'll include a link to his book if you want to check it out. And thank you guys so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Many more on the way. We'll see you soon.